What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for The Flash Season 5, Episode 22, titled Legacy. This is also the season finale of the season, and as such, there is going to be a lot to talk about. This will be a little bit different, and I won't really go over specific storylines, because there is only really one storyline, but instead I'll go over like scene by scene, not every scene, but the important ones, and say what I think about them, as well as maybe a little speculation here or there. Basically the exact same thing I did with the Arrow season finale. So with that out of the way, let's get into the review of The Flash Season 5's finale. This episode starts right where the last episode left off, where Barry is shooting the beam, I don't even remember what it's called, at the lightning dagger, which will in turn destroy it, but Ralph figured out that doing so would let Thawne free, so he jumps in front of it in a very cool looking scene. We don't get to see his powers very much, but when we do, Elongated Man looks really cool. Here he jumps using his superpowers right out in front of the beam, which also he has like the lightning dagger going back of him, which in that moment I thought he might die, but then seeing it I realized that he can't really die, at least in that way. He could probably die to like acid, as we've seen earlier, as well as like poison and things, but like a dagger cannot kill him, so this was a very cool looking scene and a great way to start the episode. After that, there are a couple scenes of Team Flash talking about why Ralph did what he did, because he's now out of commission in a very weird state that looks pretty disgusting. Also trying to figure out where Cicada is using a little bit of wood they find on the scene, which I think all these scenes work well for the pacing of the episode, as well as like setting up the conclusion fight scene between Cicada and the Flash, or Team Flash, as well as the inevitable escape of the Reverse Flash from his prison in the future. But there is one scene that I actually really like. It was kind of a refreshing take and what we've usually seen in the Arrowverse, which is when Cisco reveals that he is vibed to his girlfriend, which actually happens a lot less in the Arrowverse than I would expect, which is a character is dating someone, and that other someone doesn't know that they are a superhero, so they have to reveal to them. That actually doesn't happen as much as you would expect. It's usually like other people, like friends or family. It's not usually a significant other on these shows, but even still, when it is anybody, usually they react negatively, which is pretty stupid. I mean, if you found out a loved one of yours is a superhero, even if they are keeping it from you, you'd probably act not negatively at all, which is why here, the fact that his girlfriend acts so positively, it's very refreshing on the tired cliche, which is the fact that they're keeping a secret from you, and that's so much more important than anything else. I like how they did this here. I really like her reaction, and it makes me like her as a character way more, and also makes me like the relationship a lot more as well, which is kind of the opposite effect of like back in season 1 when Iris reacted to the fact that Barry is the Flash, and that he kept that from her. There is a scene between Barry and Nora where they kind of discuss how everything is Nora's fault and she kind of screwed everything up, and how Barry used to, or kind of still does, act just like that all the time. And I like this scene. I think it adds a lot of layers to the relationship between the two, at least in the episode. I mean, I think that having a scene where they just sit down and talk to each other really helps for the emotional payoff at the end, where as opposed to the fact if they didn't have one, and it probably would have felt a little bit less emotional. I'm not saying that it was 100% needed, but at the same time I think it adds a lot to the episode just by being there, and it's really only just like I think a minute long. So there is a scene of restoring Ralph to his regular self after he got turned into this disgusting monster that he got turned into and they restore him by blasting it with a vibrational blast, which I don't really understand how that works. I don't think they explained how that connects to anything here, how Sherlock came to that conclusion. It made no sense to me whatsoever, but at the same time, it doesn't really bother me. I mean, it is an enjoyable scene. I don't think that I probably would have been annoyed if they kept him at his disgusting state where he can't be in the episode at all throughout the entirety of the episode. I would not have liked that, so I guess this is the best way out. I just think that they didn't really explain how it fixed him. But that brings me to the final conflict and showdown between the main heroes and the main villain, Team Flash versus Cicada, which I think it's fine. It's not great. I don't think that there are a lot of things I don't like about it. There are not a lot of things I love about it, but don't get me wrong, I think it really works for the pacing of the episode. I think it really works for the build-up towards the hype of Reverse Flash returning, where she's defeated 25 minutes into the episode, and the rest of the episode is the conflict between the Flash and Reverse Flash, or Team Flash and Reverse Flash. I think it works in that regard, but where it does not work is in terms of the main villain herself, because of this, how it ended. I mean, I'm not going to say she was ever great as a main villain, but if they ended it well with a huge big fight between Team Flash and her, maybe she could have been seen a little bit better. But here, I think the way she went out, although it really worked for the episode, it did not work whatsoever for the character of Cicada, where she did not turn out to be a great villain in the end. There are like a conversation or two between Nora and the present day Grace in her mind, where there is some shoddy acting here. I think all three of the actors here are not great. I could give a pass to the kid who plays Grace Gibbons because she is a kid, but the actress who plays XS, she's a little overacting in this moment, and the actor who plays Cicada in, or the, I guess, devil angel versions of Cicada in Grace's mind, for some reason when he plays the evil version of himself, he's so over the top and I hate it. But when he plays his normal uncle self, he's fine, I guess. But these scenes don't really work all that well because of the fact that these three actors are not very good, especially in scenes like this. But again, I don't think it ruins very much of the episode at all. It just really ruins the ending conflict between Cicada and the Flash, which I guess there are not a lot of people who are excited for that. What people were excited for was the conflict between the Flash and Reverse Flash, and just in general the return of the Reverse Flash. But as for, again, the final conflict between Team Flash and Cicada, and this is the final time I'll talk about it in this review until I get to the conclusion, it wasn't great, and it was one of my least favorite parts of the episode. And I think the moment where the Flash shot the dagger, it looked really bad. I think all of it looked really bad. Thankfully, that is where the kind of mediocrity of the episode completely ended, and we got to the epicness of this episode. Just like in our Season 7's finale, while I wasn't really excited for a lot of the parts of it, there was one thing that I was genuinely hyped for, and that was in Arrow, it was the return of the Monitor and the conversations between Oliver and the Monitor and the reveal of their deal. Here in the Flash finale, the same thing where I wasn't that excited between the ending conflict between Team Flash and Cicada, but I was genuinely hyped, and I still am pretty hyped about the return of the Reverse Flash, or the escape of the Reverse Flash after they destroy the Dagger. And I don't really get how the time travel works here, how these two times are coinciding, how they're happening at the same exact time. It doesn't really make any sense linearly. I mean, if they destroy the Dagger, he, I guess, should never have been caught, or if he was, his powers should have never been dampened, or I guess they should have or would have found a different way to dampen his powers, and thus he never would have escaped. So I don't really understand how the time travel works there, but it's easy to excuse because this is an awesome moment where he gets his speed power back. First of all, I think it looks really good. I just think that visually, aesthetically, this shot right here, this picture of the lightning about to hit him, the lightning that is going to kill him, and then it all stops and he gets his powers back, it looks so cool, and it's such a hype moment, such an exciting moment, because Reverse Flash, who is undoubtedly the best villain on this show, and one of the best villains in the Arrowverse, if not the best, just going by the fact that he's appeared for more than one season, it's so exciting to see him return. And then he completely massacres all the guards, and it feels like when he kills that other guard, the one who has been kind of a character other than the other unnamed guard, this guy is a character who you have felt that he hates Thawne and Thawne hates him. It was kind of satisfying when Thawne killed him, because in this moment I was kind of rooting for Thawne because he's such an awesome character. That was all, however, rewinded using XS's rewind powers in a very cool, again, very visually and aesthetically pleasing scene here, where you see Reverse Flash shoot out his costume, and then that is all reversed to the confrontation between XS and the Flash, and it's a very aesthetically, visually pleasing moment, and just a great moment all around. There is then a conversation between Thawne and Reverse Flash and XS, where Thawne just explains his plan, why he did it, how he knew he should do it, where he kind of got the idea from XS when she mentioned Cicada back in episode 9 of this season. He wasn't really in prison back then, but I guess he would have thought that is a possibility he can use if he ever finds himself in prison in the future. He just needs to get Nora's help. and he did, and he created Cicada, and now there's kind of a time loop here, and again, the time travel there, it doesn't make any sense to me, but it's easy to get past, it's easy to ignore, because these scenes are awesome, especially like there's a scene here, like a kind of a race between two reverse flashes, a speed mirage of reverse flash, which is a speed ability that we have not seen enough of on this show. It's really cool to see, and here we see the reverse flash, or two reverse flashes fight. One is racing XS, the other is racing the Flash, and it's pretty awesome. I miss speedster races or speedster fights so much. It's one of the staples of this show that has been missing for the past 2 seasons, and when we get to see one like this, and I'm hoping we get to see so many more in the next season, it's so awesome to watch. And I know that kind of in season 3 people got sick of speedster villains, and I did too, but after 2 seasons now of not having them at all, I really miss them, and I want to see more of these speedster fight scenes, especially the ones between the Flash and Reverse Flash, because not only do they look cool, the rivalry is so good. It's one of the best rivalries in the Arrowverse, arguably the best. I think it's right next to Oliver and Adrian Chase in season 5 of Arrow as the best rivalry in the Arrowverse. Honestly, I don't know which one is better, because here you have like 5 seasons of him constantly returning in the building of that rivalry. It works so well for this episode and the show in general, and just the character as a whole. So this whole speedster fight scene, I think it works really well, and that leads to even more fights and conflicts between these two characters, as well as Reverse Flash versus the team. But then after the speedster fight scene, Reverse Flash has these monologues that I really like. I really like the Reverse Flash monologues. They kind of bring me back to the season 1 days, and it's not just a monologue. I feel like he generally loves to do this. He loves to taunt the Flash and Team Flash, so it really feels like these monologues are not just to stall. They are kind of earned in these moments. But then Team Flash joins in on the fight as they just throw a time sphere at the Reverse Flash, which is a pretty awesome moment, but also doesn't really make much sense, and it's pretty stupid. But anyway, there is more taunting and monologue between the Reverse Flash and Team Flash, which I really liked. He mentioned the fact that Ralph should be dead, as in his timeline, the pre-Flashpoint timeline, Ralph was mentioned to be dead by him. He said that Ralph died in the particle accelerator explosion, which means it wasn't a metahuman thing. He genuinely died, and Barry kind of saved him by creating Flashpoint, which means Flashpoint's kind of a better, like, the post-Flashpoint timeline is kind of better than the pre-Flashpoint timeline. Anyway, that is a tangent that I don't really need to go into right now, but there's also Thawne mentions another changed timeline that the Flash changed when he killed Cisco back in Out of Time in season 1. It's a great reference. I think that I really like these monologues. It's not just a rivalry between Barry and Thawne. The rivalry between Thawne and the entirety of Team Flash is definitely there, especially characters like Cisco and I guess Caitlin, but there isn't really much of that here. But Cisco and him definitely have a great backstory together on this show, especially, that really works for these moments. But then after that, Team Flash just completely beats Reverse Flash up. It doesn't really feel like Reverse Flash is much of a threat when they have these, 6 superheroes. They have the Flash, XS, Elongated Man, Vibe, Killer Frost, as well as Iris with a gun, and they managed to, using, I guess, a plan they created, completely beat him up, defeat him so easily. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that this scene is very visually pleasing, and I know I'm not really complaining here. I do think that 5 superheroes, as well as a character with a gun, should probably pretty easily beat someone who has the exact same powers as 2 of those superheroes, and I think it works here. And at the same time, I don't think this means that he won't be a threat at all going forward, because Team Flash just did lose 2 of their members. They lost XS because she, spoiler alert, got erased from existence, which I will talk about in a second, and also they lost Cisco because he got rid of his powers, which I will talk about in a second. So going forward, they only have the 3 superheroes of the Flash, Elongated Man, and Killer Frost, and maybe they'll get more, but it makes sense now going forward that Reverse Flash will be a much bigger threat than he was in this moment, when Team Flash, using a plan, which I do like the fact that they came up with a plan, a strategy here to take down Reverse Flash, and it works, and they successfully do that. It's a very visually pleasing scene that definitely makes a lot of sense, and I'm not complaining about the fact that the Reverse Flash should be able to defeat all 6 of these characters by himself, because I don't think he should be, but at the same time, going forward, he should be more of a physical threat than he was in this scene. Then we get to the big death of the season, actually the big erasure from existence of the season, as Nora West Allen is erased from existence. Now, that kind of pulled a sneaky on us here, where I expected one of two things to happen. Either she dies, or she goes back to the future, where I thought that if she dies, then that would be so dark for the show, to kill off a character who, right in front of her parents, where those parents are going to have to create her and raise her, or at least one of them will have to raise her, and doing so will know when and how she is going to die. It's very dark, it's very sad, so I thought that she probably will be returning to the future in this scene, or in this episode, but they kind of did something unexpected, where instead of killing her, they erased her from existence, which is not nearly as dark as killing her, because now the Flash and Iris never will create her, because I guess Barry will actually vanish in 2019, where I guess they created her in like 2020 or 2021 and 2022, probably 2024 before the crisis happened in that year. But now, going 5 years earlier, she wouldn't have never existed, and if she did, she would be 5 years older, so her whole life would be completely different, and I guess she would be a completely different person as well in everything about her. So I do like how they did this. I do think that the way they got rid of Nora Allen was the best way to do it, because I don't think she really was able to stick around going forward on this show, because it just would have made no sense for the character or for the universe. So I'm glad what they did here, but at the same time, I don't love this scene, because it's not a very emotional death. I think, for one, there's no real memorable sad music playing in the background, and I don't think music makes a scene, but I think that it can genuinely enhance a scene to the point where it is tear-jerking. I think there are a lot of death scenes in this universe that would not have been tear-jerking, or would not have been as sad if it wasn't for the incredible music in the background. The number one scene that I could think of is Tommy's death in Arrow Season 1's finale, where the music in the background enhances it so much, where here, I don't remember there being any music, which is a problem in itself, because the music should be memorable, and I think the music should have really been there, like the sad, I guess, typical death scene music that they've used on the show, which works really well for this moment to make it a lot more emotional. That being said, there was another aspect of it that did make it at least a little bit emotional, and that is the acting from Grant Gustin and Candace Patton, where they are clearly distraught about the fact that their daughter is being erased from existence, and I think both of them did a phenomenal job in this moment, as well as in the episode as a whole, making this death at least a little bit sad and emotional. If you just look at it from the perspective of Barry and Iris, it really, really works, but looking at it at the perspective from the viewer and the audience, it doesn't really work as an emotional death scene, because this season didn't really build her up as a great character, a character that you love. I think most of the audience of the show doesn't love Nora West Allen. A lot of the comments on a community post that I posted earlier saying that I'm going to post this review late, so many of them said that they're glad that Nora died, which I do understand. I don't think there would be any room for her going forward on the show, and she can be annoying at times, so I understand why people were happy about her death. I wasn't exactly happy about the death, and again, there were some emotional parts about it, but the fact that I don't love her as a character, I don't dislike her at all, but I never loved her as a character, at least after the first episode of this season, so because of that, this was not a very emotional death in the end, and it just didn't hit hard enough for the emotion and the heart at the end of this episode. But I will say this was absolutely the perfect way to get rid of this character on the show without it being too dark or forced or anything of the sort. That wasn't actually the ending of the goodbyes in the episode, as right after Nora gets erased from existence, Team Flash returns to the present day, and now that they have defeated Cicada, they say goodbye to Sherlock because he is not binded by the contract that they had that he needs to pay them back. This was slightly more emotional because while I don't love Nora Allen, I think I genuinely grew to really, really like Sherlock Wells as a character. He was one of my favorite parts of this season, honestly. Him uncracking the mystery of Nora Allen, who she's working with and why she is working with that person, and then unveiling that at the end of the season or near the end of the season. He was one of the best parts of this season, which is why this goodbye to the character is so well earned, and it's genuinely sad, and it works so well for the character. I didn't know I could grow to care about another Wells again, but I did in this season, so I really got to give credit to the show and give credit to what they did here, because this goodbye, as opposed to Nora's, was actually a sad one, but it's not even the last sad goodbye of this episode. There's actually two more goodbyes, the first one, or the third one, being the goodbye to Cisco's powers, which I don't like this. I don't love the fact that he got rid of his powers because I think it was a little forced and it doesn't really make much sense. The whole arc was that he doesn't really want to be Vibe anymore. He wants to spend more time with his girlfriend, and also he, which was stated in this episode, he wants to be extraordinary without his powers. But I think all three of those things, or the two more important things, could have been accomplished without him getting rid of his powers. If he wants to not be Vibe anymore, he can do that even if he has powers, and they could just be a convenient thing that he has for transportation or getting something, or just when he's really needed to be Vibe. And also the being extraordinary without his powers, he's already done that. He's created so many technological things, like so many technological accomplishments, as well as just science-wise, he created a cure for metahumans. So I do think that even without his powers, I mean, even with his powers, even when he was Vibe, he still did so many incredible things that I think that this arc here where he wanted to get rid of his powers, it wasn't really earned in the end. It didn't really work, in my opinion, and I don't really love the fact that he did get rid of his powers in the end, and also the fact that even without his powers after this all, I think that he should not have gotten rid of his powers and just left the show, where here he does not have his powers and he will still be present on the show going forward, which I don't really love that aspect of this whole storyline. The fourth goodbye is actually maybe my favorite scene, one of my favorite scenes of this episode, where Joe, Cecile, and Barry are called to the CCPD where they meet David Singh, who mentions that he is actually leaving the CCPD because he got a promotion, and now he promotes Joe to being the captain in a very, very satisfying moment for Joe. But also he mentions very casually that he knows Barry Allen is the Flash, which is one of my favorite moments of the episode, honestly. It's such a great moment for the character, such a satisfying moment as a whole, and it really shows that he was probably one of the most consistently great characters on the show, and definitely the most consistent recurring character on this show, and maybe the most consistent recurring character in the Arrowverse. So I definitely really like this goodbye. So Nora's message, again, another complaint I have for this character: the actress is not good. This is not a very well acted scene on Jessica Parker Kennedy's part at all. I don't know why she has such a hard time with scenes like this, or scenes in general, but the rest of it does make up for it. While the acting isn't great, the actual message and the actual speech is definitely a good one, and I really like the cutting to all these things. It cuts to Barry, or it doesn't cut, but they're just there. Barry and I are just watching it, and it's definitely a great ending to the relationship between these three characters. It cuts to Joe as the captain of the CCPD. It shows Sherlock in the cafe on, I don't remember what Earth, but whatever Earth he is from. Caitlin unveiling her new costume that we don't get to see yet, but I am definitely pretty interested in seeing her new costume, as well as Cisco walking with his girlfriend somewhere in town. But also, probably most significantly, we see Ralph pick up a file case where the name Dearbin is on it, or I don't really know how to pronounce that, but that is the maiden name of Sue Dibney from the comics, which means that they're probably going to introduce her in the next season, which I am definitely pretty interested in as well. But this was definitely a great way to kind of conclude this episode as well as this season, and it made for a pretty emotional and pretty satisfying ending to all of it. But even better than that, maybe not even better, but a great cliffhanger for this season, a thing that we kind of already knew was going to happen, but this just solidifies it. We see the Flash Missing Vanishes in Crisis newspaper, and the 2024 date moves up to 2019 because of this latest timeline change. In conclusion, I think that this was actually one of the better season finales of The Flash. Yes, there was the whole battle with Cicada, which I didn't love, and Nora's death scene I felt was lacking the emotion that it should have had, but at the same time, seeing Reverse Flash return and the way they handled that, the way they led up to that in this season, it was so enjoyable to watch. So many things were, I think, very well paid off in this episode, way better than most season finales. The action is actually probably better than it usually is. I mean, it is definitely really good. A lot of great things that I really like about this episode, like the Crisis tease at the end, and I think it is definitely one of the better season finales as like opposed to season 3 and 4 season finales. It's closer to the quality of season 1 and season 2's, so I will give this episode a 9.8 out of 10. So anyway, let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments down below, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.